crowd. Thank you everybody for coming. It is so great to be here in Amsterdam again. City that's so bike friendly. Even your canals have bicycle lanes. Amazing. Okay, maybe I made that up. So this is, I think, the fourth Apex where I come on, I talk about where we are, how we got here, where we think we should be going. We will not break with tradition. I'm going to do that again this year. But I just want to start by telling you why I'm so much more excited now than I have been before. First of all, it's because, this crowd, just the number of people, these events always energize me. But also, I'm an old guy. I lived through the internet revolution. In the late 80s, early 90s, I kind of felt like I was the only person who knew the internet existed, or what became the internet existed. The technology was nascent, and internet culture was a bunch of nerds, in some garage somewhere, and then there was popular culture. Today, internet culture and popular culture are the same thing, right? There is no distinction between internet culture and popular culture. We're starting to see that happen with blockchain right now. We're starting to see that turn, whether it's blockchain politics becoming an issue in the election in the United States, whether it's the Bitcoin ETFs and the ETFs launching, stable coins, institutional projects that are enabling DeFi ecosystems on the blockchain. We're starting to see that path to mass adoption really happen. We're not the only people who know about blockchain anymore, right? It used to be that the only people who knew about blockchain or cared about, crypto were the people who were in the space. But there's people in the finance space now, people in computer science. They all understand what's happening here. And that's exactly what led to mass adoption with the internet. So let's talk about where the XRP ledger has gone in the past, almost 12 years now? It is fully decentralized. There's more than 600 nodes processing transactions and maintaining the ledger. And importantly, each of those nodes enforces all of the system rules. And unlike on most other blockchains, those nodes are enforcing censorship resistance as well. There's more than 120 validators. We're probably the only major blockchain with no in-protocol incentives for block production or running a validator. People run validators because they want the network to work. They want the network to be robust. They want the network to be reliable and decentralized. They're run by individuals, businesses, universities. There's over 1,750 apps, exchanges on mainnet, built by a diverse set of global developers, many of whom in the room with us today. More than 2.8 billion transactions have been processed. For some time, more than 50% of transactions being processed on public blockchains were on the XRP ledger. It's gone down a lot since then because the rest of the universe has grown. But the XRP ledger has continued to process transactions at that high rate. No transaction has ever been discriminated against, filtered, censored, misexecuted, dropped, mishandled, right? It is a fair system because every single node on the network enforces that type of fairness. There's more than 5 million active XRP wallet holders around the world, and that's a real number. On a lot of other blockchains, for example, on UTXO-based blockchains like Bitcoin, a single user probably has a number of addresses. And so the address numbers may be very, very large, but those addresses don't actually reflect users, right? So those 5 million are probably real people who are using the XRP ledger, and they're using the ledger directly, right? There's a lot of people who hold Bitcoin, hold Ether, who will never use those blockchains directly. These are people who are actually potential customers for projects built on the XRP ledger because they have access to the ledger. They have their money on chain. Market capitalization of XRP is in excess of $30 billion. Makes it about the 6th largest cryptocurrency, depending on exactly what you consider to be a cryptocurrency. The number of contributors building projects of different types on the XRP ledger is enormous. As you can see on the slide, we have a large group of companies that are building wallets, custody, compliance, and security. These are tools that enable people to hold XRP, use the XRP ledger, participate in the ecosystem. Infrastructure, tools, and analytics companies. There's a lot of stuff going on the XRP ledger. The transaction rate is high. If you can't understand what's going on, you can't interact. Wallets need backends, right? There needs to be reliable hardware infrastructure. The gaming and metaverse space is a little bit on the small side, but it's been very exciting and interesting. Companies like Forte building interesting metaverse projects. And of course, marketplaces, DEXs, real-world asset tokenization and lending. These are projects building on top of the issued assets, the NFT technology, the DEX, the XRP Ledger's DEX. And then, of course, core ledger development. Ripple can't be the only people building, on the core ledger. Interoperability is extremely important. I'll talk more about that later, but we're not going to have a compelling ecosystem if we have a bunch of separate islands that have different functionality that don't connect. That's not going to be a great user experience. And then payments and stablecoins and on-ramps and off-ramps are absolutely essential. For most of us, it's not difficult for us to get money onto or off of the blockchain. A lot of us are privileged enough that we have money that we can play with on a blockchain that we don't even really think about as real money. In the early days of Bitcoin, we jokingly said, well, I had my bank account and then I had this magic internet money, right? It is great to be able to be in a position where you can do that. But realistically, if we're trying to adopt to most of the world, it's going to have to be the money that they get paid at their job. It's going to have to be the money they use to pay their rent. It's going to have to be the money that they use to buy groceries, because that's the money they have. They don't have a giant pile of money to mess around with this cool new technology. And so we have to connect. If we don't connect, we will not be able to get mass adoption. It'll always be limited to a bunch of privileged rich people. That's not exciting. So I want to take a step back and I want to talk about that inflection point that I was talking about and what's going on right now. And one of the places where you can see that the most easily, I think, is with stablecoins. The current market cap of stablecoins is around $160 billion, and it's growing so rapidly that that number is, it's going to be obsolete by in months. It's expected to grow to almost $3 trillion by 2028. And this is the next statistic is, I think, the most important one. Remember, I was talking about bleeding over into popular culture. It's great if everybody in the Bitcoin space thinks Bitcoin's great. If everybody in the crypto space thinks cryptocurrency is going to take over. Everyone in the DeFi space thinks DeFi is going to be the next big thing. What about people outside the space? 97% of institutional investors believe that tokenization is going to significantly affect asset management. These are people who they're not Bitcoin people, they're not crypto people, they're not blockchain people, they're not DeFi people, they're institutional investors. These are some of the most conservative people in the world, right? And they think that the technologies that we're building are going to revolutionize their industry. That is that bleed over into popular culture. The market value of tokenized U.S. securities alone is $1.5 billion. This is a new space. So that is that number is probably different by the time I get off this stage. And of course, the growth of tokenized assets, $16 trillion forecast by 2030. I think that's probably going to be conservative. It just makes sense to get into these spaces. If DeFi spaces and tokenized spaces are where the investors are going to be or where the money is going to be, that's got to be where the assets are, right? The assets are going to chase the money. So what does Ripple think that we need for the XRP ledger to benefit from this? Well, we need core financial primitives, right? We can't have real world asset tokenization if we don't have primitives to launch tokenized assets, right? We can't have on-chain lending if we don't have primitives for on-chain lending. And real utility has to be the guiding principle. We have to build the technologies that are the things that the market wants, right? We have to build a product that fits the market demand. Extremely important that people can build and launch compliant projects. And this is the key thing. We want enterprise projects that are compliant, but that bring customers into blockchains, right? If enterprises use the XRP ledger just for payments, that's great. That's not a bad thing, but that's not going to bring their customers onto the XRP ledger. If they use the XRP ledger to launch tokenized loans, that's going to bring the people who are going to fund those loans and who want to return onto the ledger. That's the difference in the sort of institutional DeFi type of adoption and the traditional institutional adoption that we've seen. We really see that with stablecoins, right? A stablecoin is probably one of the most regulated products in the crypto space. If you look at companies like Circle, Tether, the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, these are going to be heavily regulated products, right? Most of us will never be able to get a stablecoin directly from its issuer or redeem a stablecoin with its issuer. But there are millions of people who can hold USDT, hold USDC, hold the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, who knows what jurisdiction though. They'll be in real DeFi ecosystems. That's the difference. But it won't work if everybody has to build their own compliance. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And developers have to have great experiences. One of the biggest problems in the XRP ledger space is that there just are not a lot of people who are able to develop in that space. It has to be easy. It has to be simple. The documentation has to be good. The support has to be there. The tools have to be there. But if we can build those four things, we can have the foundation for an institutional grade blockchain with the XRP ledger leading in these institutional DeFi applications where regulated products can enable true DeFi ecosystems. We don't want to launch a regulated product on a public blockchain as an island that doesn't connect. There's no reason to do that. But it's obvious why you wouldn't launch USDC on a private blockchain, right? The whole point of a stable coin, the whole point of tokenized securities, I want to use them as collateral for loans. I want to rehypothecate them so that other people can, maybe I want to tranche them so I can have different investments with different risk profiles. I want to put together a DeFi product that's backed by an institutional stablecoin, that's backed by tokenized securities, that's backed by real commercial grade lending and real estate lending. That's what the XRP ledger could do. So let's talk about where we've gotten and where we're going to build that. I'm going to go into more detail on each of these, but I just want to give a broad description of them on one slide so that you can sort of get the vision for where we're going and where we are. So if you get too down in the weeds, you kind of lose the big picture. So big picture, we have the automated market maker. It launched in March of this year. There was a little bit of drama around the launch, as many of you know. I see some smiling faces. I'm glad we're past that, but it's working very nicely now. The lending protocol has been released. We'll talk about that in more detail, but that's another example of that sort of, that'll be very regulated lending. There'll be commercial real estate lending, but it will be tokenized on the back end, so it will enable a DeFi ecosystem. Decentralized identity, if every project has to launch its own identity infrastructure, that's just going to be terrible for everyone. Oracles are critical for things like over-collateralized stablecoins, tokenized collateral. You need to have pricing information. Multi-purpose tokens will be proposed in the third quarter. It'll fill a gap in the way assets are represented on the XRP ledger. I'll talk more about that, and the EVM sidechain. So I'm going to go into more detail of all of these, but I think like this is a roadmap for institutional DeFi. So let's start with the automated market maker, something that is extremely near and dear to my heart. As I've said many times, I've been experimenting with trading and volatility harvesting and different types of strategies for probably 30 years now. There is a tremendous amount of volatility in digital assets, and just like logically there shouldn't be, because volatility is exploitable. There are trading strategies that profit from volatility. It's really simple, basically. You sell high and you buy low. It literally is that simple. And that's what the automated market maker does. It executes a trading strategy. But the most interesting thing I think about the XRP ledger's automated market maker is how it integrates with the other functions on the XRP ledger into what we've been calling the super DEX. The XRP ledger has order books. Some people call them central limit order books or CLOBs. And what that means is people place offers to buy or sell one asset for another. It's a trade. And they sit on order books to be taken by other people. Many blockchains can't implement order books because most trades are not taken. This is just the way markets work. Most people who place an offer to trade, nobody takes that offer. The price changes before anyone takes it and they rescind the offer. If it costs you $4 or even $2 to place an offer, then order books will be very, very limited to only really major assets. In fact, in some cases, there just aren't any assets that big, and order books just don't work. And so in most EVM-based chains, you just don't have order books. You only have AMMs. The XRP ledger has order books. These are very capital efficient for popular assets, but they're not very good for unpopular assets because somebody has to actively make a market. These facilitate manual market making. So I can make a market between XRP and a USD stablecoin by placing offers into the order books. But someone has to do that. And there's not going to be anyone who's going to do that for hundreds of assets. Automated market makers take that long tail of assets. So those on-chain order books operate 24/7. And the automated market maker executes a trading strategy that harvests volatility. So if you have an automated market maker between, say, XRP and a USD stablecoin, it will get revenue not just from market making, but also from volatility harvesting. The AMM that we designed for the XRP ledger has a couple of unique features. One of them that I think is important is just that it benefits from the XRP ledger's core architecture. Transactions are very cheap and very fast. If transactions are expensive, that's going to limit people's ability to interact with the AMM, and you're going to sort of lose a large number of low-value transactions. A small number of high-value transactions is good, but a large number of low-value transactions is just as good. And if you lose that, you're missing 50% of the picture. There is no MEV, there are no block producers, there's nobody who controls the order of transactions on the XRP ledger, and that helps to prevent money from essentially being taken from the liquidity providers. The continuous auction mechanism, this is an exclusive that we developed, that takes some of the revenue that would have been given to arbitrageurs and gives them to the LP token holders. So the basic gist of this is, let's say you're an arbitrager and you calculate that you could make $100 a day. The XRP Ledger's AMM implementation sells execution privileges that allow you to do the majority of the arbitraging. So if you're going to make $100 a day from that, you have to bid for the privilege of arbitraging. And you might bid, let's say, $90 a day to make that $100 a day, which means instead of the liquidity providers losing $100 a day, they only lose $10 a day, which reduces impermanent loss and increases yield. And there's voting over the control of the pool trading fees. The lending protocol is another one of those institutional DeFi applications. It's enterprise consumer lending and real estate lending. It doesn't change the underwriting portion. And of course, if someone doesn't pay back a loan, you have to sue them. You don't sue them on chain, right? Or you have to negotiate with them. Maybe they're in bankruptcy or whatever. That is all done the exact same traditional way. What's unique is the back end, where the capital comes from and where the payments go. So the way the proposed lending protocol works is there's a single tokenized pool of the asset that's going to be lent. It could be XRP, it could be a USD stablecoin. The manager who owns each lending pool will decide who gets a loan, how much the loan is, what the term is, what the interest rate is, and they will actually approve the loan. And then the borrower will be able to extract the funds from the pool. When payments are made, the payments will be determined by the pool. So on one side, you have this heavily regulated CeFi, centralized commercial lending, and on the other side, you have a tokenized back end. The underwriting, the risk management, litigation if necessary, contract execution, all of those things take place off-chain. A unique feature here is on-chain first loss capital protection, which helps to protect the lenders in case there's a small number of the loans in the portfolio that don't get paid back or go bad. Interoperability, extremely, extremely important. As I said, I lived through the internet revolution. Everybody in this room probably has a smartphone, has home internet access. There is no one single thing on the internet that is so compelling that it's the reason that you have that. It's because everything is on the internet. If there's some information you need and it isn't on the internet, why the hell not? If information you need is not on the internet, something is really wrong, right? Everything is on the internet. Now, there are a small number of things that are tremendously valuable. A lot of people love X, used to be Twitter. A lot of people love Amazon. A lot of people love, Meta. But there's a long tail, right? There may be 30 people in the world who are gay, lesbian, and bisexual fans of Space 1999, but to them it is the most important thing in the world. And the internet can provide not just what everybody wants, but what these very small groups of people want. And that long tail is tremendously valuable. And that's what only interoperability can give us. If our users have to, imagine if you wanted to use the internet and you say, oh, that web server's on Wi-Fi and using Linux. I'm used to web servers that are using Microsoft and fiber optics. That would be a terrible experience, right? And in the blockchain space right now, you have different wallets for different blockchains. You have assets that are on different, right? It's not a good user experience. If we want to be compelling, we have to be seamless. One of the first things that we need is asset portability. That's not all of interoperability, but that's a big piece, and that's the piece we need now. And one possibility is the XRP Ledger as a trading hub across blockchains with the DEX, the payment engine, pathfinding, the various different XRP Ledger features that enable the movement of assets. In fact, one of the very first applications on the XRP Ledger in the very, very early days was as a way to move Bitcoin faster and cheaper. Issued assets enable, remote assets that are based on different chains along with bridges. So I think that's an extremely important step towards interoperability, but it's just one piece. The industry has a long way to go. But if we want mass adoption, users are going to have great experiences. We have to solve interoperability problems. The XRP Ledger could be a token bridge for asset portability, but that's not the whole solution. So I want to talk a little bit about how I think about the EVM sidechain and EVM programmability. That's another one of those things to target that long tail. So if you need AMMs, the XRP Ledger has it. If you need NFTs, the XRP Ledger has it. If you want an issued asset, you want an order book, the XRP Ledger has it. But what if you want something that's a little different? You have some weird quirk in NFTs that you need that the XRP Ledger can't support. And maybe Only 10 people in the world care about it, but for those 10 people, it's extremely important. The XRP ledger can't do that. It's a fixed function ledger. It adopts functions that are of broad, the 80% of the, the 20% that solves 80% of the problem. EVM can target the long tail, and we don't want to tell people who have those problems in the long tail, we're sorry, we just don't have any way to help you. Just go somewhere else. We don't want to kick them out of our ecosystem. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking, which is like the XRP ledger is why we're here. It's what's important. And that's true. But I just want to point out, in the early days, we celebrated every exchange listing. That is not an XRP ledger thing, right? People who hold tokens on exchanges, they're not using the ledger, but they're using XRP. And I'm hoping that we can see the XRPL EVM sidechain. Oh, announcement, it has a name. I wanted to call it Niobium, I lost. It is called the XRPL EVM sidechain. I know that's what everybody was calling it anyway, but that is actually its name. That is a bona fide announcement. I'm not lying. It is actually going to be called the XRPL EVM sidechain. I want you to think of that as a true part of the XRP ecosystem. XRP will be its native token, and it will be able to address that long tail of use cases. And if we have asset portability, I hope we can think of it as part of the XRP ecosystem, and the XRP is not just the XRP ledger. Maybe that's too much to ask. So Axelar is going to provide the bridge for the native token. Anybody who wants to can provide other bridges for other tokens, but you do have to have one bridge for the native token, the gas token. That's going to be provided by Axelar. It's going to use a proof of authority consensus. It'll have a block explorer, and you'll be able to use traditional EVM wallets. It will be a traditional EVM chain. One of the advantages of being able to launch projects on the EVM sidechain is the development cycle is much faster. So it took, 2 years to bring AMMs onto the XRP ledger? Let's say somebody said, hey, I want to do securities derivatives with leverage trading and some other weird thing on it, over collateralization, blah, blah, blah. You could maybe launch that on the XRP ledger in a year. You could launch that on an EVM sidechain in probably 2 months, and it's much easier to find developers. So we have to be realistic. For that long tail of projects, if we don't have a place inside our ecosystem for those projects to go, they're going to go elsewhere. And so we should be inclusive. Decentralized identity is extremely important if we're going to have a large number of smaller projects. So when you think about enterprise DeFi, you think of maybe like the 10 biggest companies. So I was telling you about it before, like we had the enterprises like that launch stable coins or tokenized securities, then we have we have all the users on the DeFi, but there is a middle, right? There's something else that's not in that picture, which is medium-sized businesses that are not going to launch a stable coin. They're not going to tokenize securities, but they're still going to do very interesting things in regulated spaces. And they're going to have some way to onboard users that can, meet KYC, AML, and sanction screening. The traditional way you would do that is you would send your driver's license or passport to every single company that you wanted to onboard with. Well, that is terrible for everybody. Why is that terrible for you? Do you trust these projects? If they're small to medium, you would have to think, how good is their security? How much money are they spending on protecting my identity information? And it's terrible for them because it's a pure cost center. They don't want to have your driver's license. They don't want to have your passport. They don't want to do KYCML. They're doing it. Why does the law require them to do KYCML? Because they wouldn't do it if the law didn't make them do it, right? They're not happy about it. It's a cost center for them. If they get hacked and lose your identity information, you're not happy. Nobody's happy, right? It's a terrible system. So we need a standard. This is a W3 standard. Ripple didn't invent it. It didn't come from the XRP ledger community. It's a W3 standard for the underlying data, and it's a standard for storing it on the XRP ledger. So what this allows you to do is you go to a company like Fractal ID. They're in the identity business. That's all they do. They want to store your data because that's their business. This is not something they had to do to launch the business they wanted to launch. This is the business they wanted to launch. They'll go to you and they'll say, use us as your identity provider, and then you'll have an identity that all of these like medium-sized projects can use, with the XRP ledger as sort of the clearinghouse for the reference information. So this is an extremely important enabler for that vision of enterprise DeFi. It's not just the very biggest companies on one side and all the DeFi users, but there's small and medium businesses that have to have a place too. And this is a key enabling technology for them. Oracles are another enabling technology. They're not really that sexy all by themselves. They don't do anything amazing all by themselves, but they're a critical enabling technology for things like over-collateralized loans. So if you have collateralized, or let's say you have an over-collateralized stablecoin, or let's say you use a token as collateral for something else, the system has to know the value of the things that it's holding. You need an oracle for that. Band Protocol and DIA are going to be providing oracles, but anybody who wants to can provide an oracle. The XRP ledger doesn't discriminate against who's providing the data. There will be an actual oracle object on the ledger that will hold the pricing information and will be available for use by other ledger features. So multi-purpose tokens are interesting. The XRP ledger currently has really three types of tokens. There's XRP, which is its own thing. It has its own rules, divisible into drops. It's the native token. You use it to pay fees and so on. There's NFTs, which are designed for things that are one of a kind. And then there's issued assets, or IOUs, that are really designed for assets that are fully fungible and infinitely divisible, things that work like money. But there's assets that don't fit either of those models, or any of those. Concert tickets are a good example. They're semi-fungible. They're not really NFTs. But you don't want to think of them as infinitely divisible. If 100 people show up at a concert and each one of them has 99.998 of a ticket, it's super awkward, right? Multi-purpose tokens have finite configurable divisibility, which has two advantages. Number one, you can support things like concert tickets that shouldn't be divided, but also you can have a specified number of decimals, which makes the math much more easily. You can have a fixed token supply. I know you can have a fixed token supply with IOU assets, but you kind of have to bash a square peg into a round hole to make it work. They work nicely. Another important thing about these is the asset itself is a thing. So the way the XRP ledger is designed, you might think of an asset as a thing. So for example, Bitstamp issues USD on the XRP ledger. We think of Bitstamp USD as a thing, but the ledger doesn't think of Bitstamp USD as a thing. From the ledger's point of view, there's a bunch of people who Bitstamp owes money to. And the asset itself is not a thing. It's very much like your balance on the Bitcoin blockchain. If you have an account on the Bitcoin blockchain, and you have a balance, there's no such thing as accounts or balances on the Bitcoin blockchain. Usually we think of it. An account is all the UTXOs that can be claimed by the same private key. A balance is the total of all those, right? Assets are not, issued assets are not a thing on the XRP ledger. They're just like balances or accounts on Bitcoin. But with MPT, with these assets, the asset itself is a thing, and so it can have properties. So as you see on your screen here, this is an example of an asset that has properties. It has a supply, it has decimals, it has a symbol, and all of this is represented on the ledger. There is currently no asset, there's no way to do that currently on the XRP ledger. So MPTs will enable this sort of more flexible type of asset. The token will be a thing, so it will have a token ID. Tokens can be made non-transferable if they're things that represent, information that is not value. Well, that's about it. This QR code will go to a link tree. Have a look at the XRPL Commons, which does all kinds of educational outreach, hackathons. The XRP Learning Portal has links directly to the documentation. The grants and the accelerator, these are programs that provide resources like money. We just recently announced a geographic focus on Brazil. We're going to be focusing on Japan and Korea as well. I just want to say one more thing before I go, though. Ripple's vision for the XRP ledger, I didn't say a bunch about NFTs today. That doesn't mean I don't think they're a good idea, right? A vision isn't everything that you think is a good idea. I just want to be clear that if you want to build things that don't perfectly fit that vision, that's fantastic. I am not saying that those are bad things, that those are things that you shouldn't do. Ripple, the grants, the accelerator program, all of our support is not limited to things that perfectly fit this enterprise DeFi vision. That's just something that we think is interesting. That's something that we think the XRP ledger can capitalize on. That's a trend that we think could be a path to mass adoption, but it doesn't mean that other things are bad and that you shouldn't build them. Again, we want to be incredibly inclusive. We don't presume that we know what the best things to do. I wish we were that smart. We're not. We need you guys to build the things that you're passionate about. Thank you.